morning,
Go ahead
Chair
and
and
go ahead and proceed
meeting.
whenever you're ready.
Senator Angela Mosley from the 13th District. This is a free meal act, began as a free meal act for schools. But I did do a substitute that you all should have received. So now this bill will establish Missouri School Meals Act. Under the act, the schools shall provide a free lunch to students who qualify for reduced price lunch under the National School Lunch Program. Subject to appropriations, the State Board of Education shall reimburse schools for their share of the cost of providing free lunches to students who qualify for reduced price lunch. This bill came about because students in rural areas advised that they were having problems paying their lunch. That's one student advised that her mom required her to pay for her lunch, and she didn't always have the money to pay for it. Students being turned away from lunch because they have a balance. So this will help feed students who are unable to pay for their lunches, even though the country feels that they should be able to. And I'll take any questions.
All right, questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, anybody testify in support of Senate Bill 321?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening to this bill this morning. My name is Christine Woody, and I am the Food Policy Manager at Empower Missouri. We're a statewide nonprofit that does a lot of policy advocacy and community education on a wide range of issues, and food security is one of them. So since 1946, when President Truman at the time signed into law the National School Lunch Program, our lowest income families have been able to receive a free lunch for their students. Starting in the pandemic, Congress passed lots of new provisions that were put in place to help out businesses, schools, individuals, and children. And during that time, during the heart of the pandemic, the federal government covered the cost of school lunch for every student in the schools across our nation. This past school year, it reverted back to the original program where students who were at 130% of poverty and below received a free lunch. Students at 185% to 130% received a reduced price lunch. During that time when all students received free school meals, there were lots of stories and lots of research done that shows how important school meals are to families. And a lot of states, in response to that, when it reverted back to the original mission of the program, decided to do something a little different, and a lot of states have passed bills and have started paying for and covering school lunches for not only all of their students, sometimes at the reduced rate or even a different level of the federal poverty level. And hence Senator Mosley filing this bill, which would cover that reduced price cost of lunch. Right now, students who are at 185% of poverty and below do qualify for a reduced price lunch, but that amount still is a challenge for a lot of those families. And this would just create a state fund that would cover those meals for those students. And we are just here in support of that. It would really help those families cover those costs, allow their families to not have to worry about debt, and allow their children to receive that meal, which is vital and so important to learning. So thank you for listening today, and I appreciate your support. I'll take any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support Senate Bill 321?
Hi, my name is Madison Ikre. I'm the Public Policy Coordinator at Operation Food Search, which is a nonprofit based in the St. Louis County area, and they serve 27 surrounding counties in the Missouri and Illinois side, providing and working with over 330 food pantries there. And what we've heard firsthand, we know that food pantries also aren't meeting the need of folks with the high rates of food insecurity we have in Missouri and across the nation. Right now, 1 in 6 children in Missouri experience food insecurity, And one thing that we learned throughout the pandemic especially was that students are receiving their meals at school. A lot of nutrition, it was shown to be at school. So for a family of 4, this expansion of covering the copay for that reduced price meal, it would be 130% of the poverty guideline to 185%, which translates to about $39,000 to $55,000 a year for a family of 4. So we see that that's like a very high need population, and it's really important for us to be addressing the food crisis that we have, especially for students who are trying to do their best to learn and get a good education. And so there are a lot of benefits to providing meals to students, but beyond that, it also makes it easier for schools to be able to run these programs, easing administrative burdens of trying to collect school meal debt, and also just the administrative functions of monitoring school meals. There's also been 10 other states that have successfully eliminated the reduced price meal copay, and about 3 have achieved universal free school meals. And yeah, one of the other important pieces of this bill is eliminating the ability to have lunch debt shaming, so making sure that if students go up to get a meal, that they're not turned down or embarrassed or made, to feel embarrassed for trying to get a meal that they can't afford. So making sure that as many kids that can access these really important meals and nutrition is a really good thing for our state. So please consider supporting this bill. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support of Senate Bill 321?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Otto Fage on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'd also like to go on record in support of Senate Bill 321. We thank the sponsor for bringing this forward. We won't repeat the previous witnesses' testimony, but we completely concur. Proper nutrition is essential for student success, and our reality is that so many students now rely upon school as the primary source of nutrition. We think this bill really helps to make sure that that's not a barrier to learning. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 321?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Robin Shelp. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy for Kids Win Missouri, and we want to go on record as being in support of this for the same reason as everyone else mentioned. This is a good bill for children. And thank you to the sponsor. Any questions?
Anybody else testify in support Senate Bill 321? Anybody testify in opposition to Senate Bill 321? Anybody testify for informational purposes only? All right, that concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 321. We will now move to Senate Bill 495.
Good morning.
You can proceed whenever you're ready.
Okay, good morning, or good afternoon. I guess it's still morning. For the record, Senator Carla Eslinger, Senator representing the 33rd Senatorial District. I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate Bill 495. It's a bill that would modify provisions relating to state funding to certain early childhood education programs. While we've heard a lot about child care already this year, I think it's important that we look at the child care crisis we're facing. And according to a study conducted by the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, 61% of parents reported missing work due to child care issues. Around 260,000 parents left the workforce due to child care issues, and Missouri loses annually roughly about $1.35 billion to our economy because of lack of child care. Senate Bill 495 is different from previous child care bills that have been heard on the floor, as this bill is not a tax credit or focused on private businesses, but about supporting our public and charter schools that already provide early childhood programs. Our public and charter schools have an infrastructure in place to provide child care to our communities. If we could help to expand them, it would be of great benefit. This will ensure an experience for our children that is educational, safe, easy to access for our Missouri families. You know, Senate Bill 495 also tackles the issue that we find in many of our rural counties, like mine. According to a United We study, 47 of our 115 counties don't even have licensed child care centers. By providing additional funding to our schools, we can help them to expand their operations and better address this particular child care crisis. So thank you again for the opportunity to present my bill, and I know we have some expert witnesses to discuss child care crisis as well, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, anybody testify in support of Senate Bill 495?
Good morning. My name is Linda Rollo. I'm with Aligned. I want to thank Senator Eslinger for bringing this bill forward and to the chairman for hearing it. I want to touch on a few things. We have about almost a 10-year history of putting foundation formula dollars towards pre-K in our state, and it was phased in a very incremental way, which I think was really smart. It started first in 2014 for unaccredited school districts, and then provisionally, and then when we fully funded the formula, we made that funding available to the entire state. The great thing is, like, now all school districts have an opportunity to use pre-K, but it's at this 4% cap. It's sort of an artificial barrier, and you can draw down a certain number of students based on that 4% threshold, which for a lot of larger districts, like our big suburban districts and our urban districts, is great because you can, you know, get funding for a lot of students. But for our smaller school districts, especially our rural, you're only going to maybe get a handful of students that you can count for these pre-K seats, and you cannot start a pre-K classroom with 5 students. So this bill kind of goes a long way to addressing that inequity across all of our districts and creates an opportunity for an even distribution of these funds. And I'm happy to talk to you about all the benefits of pre-K. I can tell you about some of these situations in Kansas City and St. Louis where they've created these collaborations with the charter schools and even KCPS pooling these funds and addressing pre-K. I'm happy to talk about the benefits, but I just kind of wanted to point out that we do have this uneven distribution, and Senator Eslinger's bill will go a long way to correct that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Arthur.
Thanks for your testimony. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of this, but there has been some concern about funding going towards public schools displacing some of the other providers who rely on those kiddos. Can you just speak to how this is one piece of the entire ecosystem?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So when this bill was first introduced, there were some questions around, would this hurt our child care market? And I think some of those concerns are okay, like they're well-founded, but I think that there's a lot of fear just based on uncertainty. So I did do some anecdotal checking. I called private providers around the state and I said, listen, this is the bill, this is how it works. Would this be something that you would want to see happen, or would you be worried that it would hurt? And every single person that I talked to said, no, more money is helpful and we can form partnerships with our community providers. And I think this contracting opportunity is really going to do great things for our rural community. So I don't want to lie and say, no, you know, there could be some effects, but I think generally we're building a really robust mixed delivery system in our state that has room for school-based early childhood, for home-based early childhood, and for independent, you know, faith and center-based. So I think we'll work through it, and I think that this will just kind of be a situation where all boats can rise.
All right. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support Senate Bill 495?
Thanks. Good morning. Robin Shelton with Kids Win Missouri. I just want to thank Senator Eslinger for her support of children with this legislation, as well as the governor for his commitment to improve early care and education. I'm not going to belabor some of the points that were made. I do want to highlight, though, a study that just recently, last week, came out of Springfield by the Mayor's Commission for Children, and it is called the Readiness for Kindergarten 2022 report. And it breaks down how ready their kindergartners were. But when you look at the kindergartners who are on free and reduced lunch, which is the kindergartners that would be impacted by this legislation, only 40% of students who did not attend preschool or pre-K were ready for kindergarten. Compared to those who did attend preschool or pre-K, 70.2% were ready. That is a significant difference in a classroom. So this legislation just has such an impact on children, getting them the support they need for school. It provides care. It helps the workforce. There's just so much that it does. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Anybody else testify in support Senate Bill 495?
Good morning. Kara Korches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, also in support due to the fact that this would help increase our capacity for child care, which is vitally needed. Not going to repeat all the comments before me, but for these reasons we're in support, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Anybody else testify in support Senate Bill 495?
Mike Harris on behalf of the Department of Elementary Secondary Education, the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education is in favor of phasing in programs that support pre-K in public school districts and is in favor of this bill. Thank you. Answer any questions.
Anybody else testify in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tricia Workman here today representing the Missouri Charter Public School Association, and we want to go on record in support.
Anybody else testifying in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. The association would also like to go on record in support. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody else testifying in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Becky Lohman, registered lobbyist for the Opportunity Trust, just want to go on record in support.
Anybody else testifying in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Wood, representing the Missouri State Teachers Association, here to testify in support of the bill.
Anybody else testifying in support? Anybody testifying in opposition of Senate Bill 495? Anybody testifying for informational purposes only? All right, anything to add?
Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill. I think it's very important for the children of Missouri, especially in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 495. We're going to go ahead and take roll. Establish a quorum.
Chairman Koenig.
Here.
Vice Chair Bratton. Here. Senators Arthur. Here. Beck. Gannon. Here. Hoskins. Here. Razer. Schroer. Trent.
All right, we'll go ahead and move to Senate Bill 476.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Curtis Trent, representing District 20. Senate Bill 476 would basically eliminate or would prevent the state, any state agency. And I will also say, before I get too deep into this, the bill currently would apply to all state workers and municipalities. The plan is to draw that back to just state employees, not local municipalities, and not university employees. But the goal of this bill is to shift hiring practices for state positions towards skills-based hiring rather than using a college degree as a barrier for jobs that do not require a degree. So what it would do is is say that if you have two equally qualified employees or potential employees, your sole-based decision for hiring can't be that one has a degree and one does not. And so this will, of course, enable the state to have a wider pool of potential hires and ensure they get a candidate who's the right fit for the job if they have the skills and experience to do the job. Only about 31% of Missourians have a college degree, so this bill will ensure that there's more workers who are available for the potential pool that the state can draw from for employees. And we've seen, over the last few years especially, there's been a difficulty in filling all positions. And so again, this artificial barrier is not one that we should keep in place. Currently, according to the statistics I have, about 7,000 state positions are open that we're having a hard time filling. In other states, particularly Maryland, when a similar policy was implemented, there was a 41% increase in non-degree holding state hires for the first 4 months, which helped fill the many open positions that they had. So I think this is a bill that can help with our workforce issues. It's a bill that can help Missourians who may have not had opportunities in their early life to get a college degree still find employment that they're highly suited for, and it's kind of a win-win all around for everyone involved. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Arthur.
I have a question. Can agencies make these hiring decisions on their own, or does it require legislative action?
I think it does require legislative action. Agencies have like a formula that they use, and I suppose in theory they could relax the requirements for hiring, but they've shown very little interest in doing that. So I think it's appropriate for the General Assembly that oversees the broad policies of the state to step in and say, you should look elsewhere for highly qualified people. You shouldn't have kind of these artificial bureaucratic barriers to entry.
Do you have a sense, are people applying for these jobs and then being turned down because they don't have the educational experience, or are they just not applying?
I suspect they're not applying at all. They just see, like when a job opening is listed, it'll say, degree required, and if you don't have one, it discourages you from applying up front, would be my guess. But, it's hard to read the minds of people who aren't applying.
Well, I would also be curious to know how many have applied that don't have that experience and have been turned down.
I'll see if we could find that information.
Okay.
I don't know if those kind of statistics are kept, but if they are, we'll try to find them.
Thank you. Thanks.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. Anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 476.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. James Harris, registered lobbyist for the Cicero action here, testify in support of this bill, which really just kind of, as the senator said, encourages hiring practices based on skills. About a month and a half ago, I looked at a job posting for Department of Social Services for someone to work in a call center, and they required a bachelor degree to apply. Now, I didn't go into all the parameters of why, but I do think we saw probably HR starting in the 90s started using more templates maybe in hiring practices or job postings, and often many of these just say to apply you must have a bachelor degree, etc. The committee substitute that the senator's been working on would only pertain to state workers. I think the initial committee bill as drafted could pertain to local government. That's been cut. So we think this is a good common sense way to maybe open up some jobs for people to apply. The departments would still have the discretion if they're needing someone to be a lawyer, doctor, etc., where you do need that degree, obviously, to still hire a person based on that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So it looks like the language is a little bit vague on like which jobs would still require it. Can you elaborate more on that?
Within state government on the
Yeah.
committee sub, it gets a little tricky there because there's not really, like in the federal level, you have GS, the different levels, so it gets a little easier. We don't really have that in the state, so it would be I'd be happy to work with you, Mr. Chairman, on how maybe better to make it less vague, but the intent would be give the departments where they wouldn't put up the artificial barrier but still have the discretion if it's something professional engineers, et cetera, they need that.
Like, are we talking like jobs that are clearly you need a degree for, like, you know, a doctor, lawyer, engineer,
so
or is it I don't know if it's clear enough in there. I'm just, you know.
Well, we'd be happy to work in your art. Intent would be if you need doctors, engineers, people
Yeah.
to have those professional, the departments also have that discretion. I think where we'd like to is remove the artificial barrier. I'd say like entry-level jobs, the Department of Corrections, other type of things that probably it's not really needed to have a college degree. You know, having other skills might be, or work experience might be more useful.
Mm-hmm. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 476.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Jeremy Cady. I'm the State Director for Americans for Prosperity. We want to go on record in support of Senate Bill 476. There are a lot of positions now that don't necessarily require a college degree. Especially, I've got a lot of friends and individuals that I work with that work in IT, technology, and a lot of those don't necessarily have the same requirements that they might have used to have. And so oftentimes people actually take a lot of online courses now. They get the learning that they need. They can still supply the same services to the states or in the job that others could, you know, going through the college degree courses as well. And I think this is an opportunity to allow the state to, you know, basically tap into another resource of individuals. Companies have been doing this. They've been moving in this direction of, you know, reducing a lot of their degree requirements for some of their positions, and we think this just allows the state to follow suit.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support? Anybody testify in opposition to Senate Bill 476? Anybody testify for informational purposes only on Senate Bill 476?
So I'd like to elaborate just slightly on what one of the other witnesses said. So, like, for example, if you required a lawyer as a worker, even if you didn't list a degree as a requirement, you can't be a lawyer in Missouri if you're not a graduate of an accredited university and pass the bar exam. So, by necessity, the skills or the skill set required to do the job would necessitate a degree. And so so agencies would still be able to have a degree requirement where it's appropriate to do so. But we'll be happy to work on language to make that as clear as possible, but that is the intent. And I really appreciate the committee hearing this bill. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 476. I'll make a motion to go into executive session. Been second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I'll make a motion to bring up Senate Bill 508. It's been second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Discussion on Senate Bill 508. This is Senator Brown's bill relating to recall elections. Discussion? Yeah. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to do pass Senate Bill 508. Been second.
Chairman Koenig.
Aye.
Vice Chair Braden. Senators Arthur, Beck, Gannon, Hoskins, Razer, Schroer, Trent.
You have due passed Senate Bill 508. I'll make a motion to go out of executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. Now we'll have a hearing on Senate Bill 691.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Senator Greg Razer from the 7th District in Jackson County, here to present Senate Bill 691. This issue was brought to my attention recently. I'm going to try to explain it the best I can, but there are people behind me that can do a much better job. Essentially what is happening with our public universities is when looking to make investments, the firms that they're investing in are hesitant to come to Missouri Public Universities because they would have to disclose the third parties that they are investing in. And if I can say that better, universities have to disclose the information. So when they invest in huge fund companies, they still have to disclose that they invest in that company, but not, what they won't have to do is disclose the third parties that the companies invest the money in. These huge fund companies don't like doing business with Missouri universities because they have to disclose that third party information, and a lot of times those are trade secrets for the university. So this bill would explicitly say that that doesn't have to be shared. And Senator, please don't ask a lot of questions.
So do we know how other states deal with this?
You know, I'm not sure. I assume other states would have this problem as well. I know this would help us compete with private institutions that obviously wouldn't fall under those kind of public record requests.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. Anybody else? Anybody testify in support? Senate Bill 691.
Good morning. My name is Dusty Schneiders. I represent the University of Missouri system, and we are in support of this bill. So what this bill would allow us to do is when we invest in a hedge fund company or a capital venture company, and they turn around and they invest our money in a radiopharmaceutical company, that we would have to disclose that third party. And a lot of times these companies say, yeah, no, we don't want to do this because those are trade secrets that they're trying to keep from their competitors when they're investing in it. So we're having some problems trying to invest in those types of companies, venture capital and things like that. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Do you know how other states deal with
Yes,
this?
so there other states have this language in there. I don't know how many, but I can get you that answer.
Further questions? Seeing none. Anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 691. Anybody testify in opposition to Senate Bill 691? Anybody testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none. All right. That concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 691. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Been second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it.